in 1995, I think it was 95, I got snowed in at a hotel. I was on a client visit and I got snowed in and I spent 3 days in a hotel. And to make best use of that time, what I did was I sat back and took some time to really reflect on what my top needs and values are as a professional. And I came up with a list of 12 values that were important to me, and they sit on my credenza in my office, and they sort of become anchors for me in terms of what I do professionally. The second thing was to develop a mission statement. Again, this is a piece of advice I would offer to others, and it was part of my learning.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Kevin, and today we are joined by Terry Poling. He's the founder of the Poling Group. He's been in the coaching industry for 30 plus years. Welcome to the podcast, Terry.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks, Kevin.
Man, you podcast, you were telling me about your history, about how you got into coaching. And I was like, dude, you have to stop right away because there's just so much here. So when we start off at the origin story, the beginning, the lore, tell me how you got into the coaching business. And yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, I'm sort of a strange duck in that regard. I knew early in my career that mid-career I wanted to establish my own consulting business practice. So early in my career, I spent 18 years inside organizations, primarily in the Boston area, as an organizational development consultant and trainer. And I intentionally moved from different companies to different industries to different assignments intentionally, because I knew I wanted to get as much diverse experience in my career as possible from the inside as a way of equipping myself for delivery of those services on the outside. And so actually that's one of the things that I'd offer your listeners. If there's anything from this podcast that is of value to them, I hope it's some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And it kind of starts there. Having a vision and a long-term plan for yourself I have found beneficial.
Yeah. So did you always know that you were going to start this business like from the beginning, or did it kind of develop?
Well, the nature of the business evolved over time, and the scope obviously grew over time as well. Knew that I wanted to be my own. Another piece of advice is to know yourself and to know what you value. And one of the values that's very high on my list is a high level of independence and autonomy. I've known that for a long time. So a key motivator for me was to establish a business where I could be my own boss and make my own professional decisions. And that really moved me early in my career to move towards establishing a business or practice for myself. Again, I was in organizational development. There was no such thing as executive coaching back in those days. This goes back a few years. And so I got a second master's degree in counseling psychology, thinking that would serve me well in terms of working with leaders, in terms of leadership development. So I started in what you would call coaching work today, working with leaders in one-on-one situations and offering them coaching around their own development and their own leadership.
And I'm kind of curious too, because everybody in the coaching business, they always talk about ideal client profiles and all that. And so I'm curious, over these last 30 years, one, did that kind of evolve? And two, how did you kind of decide who you want to help and the problems that you help those people?
Yeah, that's a great question and a real consideration for anybody that's in business for sure. Another value that I hold and have held through my entire career is having positive impact. And it's been my philosophy that if I could have positive impact on a single leader, that my impact was exponential, because they, being a leader, would then have subsequent impact on the people who worked with them and for them. And so leadership development has always been an area where I felt that I've been able to have a significant impact in people's personal lives as well as business success and business effectiveness. So back at the beginning, the scope was much smaller. I really started in more the consulting and training field, and worked with businesses around organizational projects that they had. And what I found in working with leaders on those projects is that it was always beneficial to establish what I called a thinking partnership with them, where there was one-on-one time where we could reflect on what was being decided, what was being implemented, what was happening, and also focus in privacy on the leader's own thinking and the leader's own behaviors as a way of bringing them to full awareness around their own leadership. And from there, it's sort of then grew into coaching, leadership coaching be one of the three legs on the stool. The other two has been organizational consulting, providing consulting services. And then the third is training. Done a lot of extensive leadership development training over the years.
And excuse me if I'm not quite sure. Can you explain what organizational consulting is?
Sure. Yeah, it's a mouthful. My background was in organizational communications, and I had, along with the counseling psychology focus in my second master's, I also did a program in organizational studies. And what organizational development practitioners do is they work with the business to really, in parallel with the mechanics of change, for example, or implementing a transformational change of any kind, they work with the organization to determine the human side of that change and what's necessary in order for, let's say, Six Sigma being implemented in an organization as a practice. What's the cultural aspects of that? What's the human aspects of that? And how do leaders then work with that side of the coin as well as the mechanic prescribed side of change? So organizational development is helping leaders look at organizations as living systems rather than as machines, because machines need to be programmed. Machines have disposable parts, interchangeable parts, where living organisms don't, but living organisms have the capacity to learn and grow and develop. And so thinking about an organization in that way and helping leaders lead in that way is a big part of what organizational development practitioners do.
And what are kind of like, by focusing on growing this, right? Like, I guess so organizational consulting or development, the words that you put it, what are kind of the benefits of that in an organization? What are kind of the consequences of not focusing on that in a business as well?
It's a great question. When you focus on organizations as living systems, as opposed to organizations as machines, you recognize that change, for example, has three phases. One is building readiness for change. The second is the change itself. And then the third element, which is oftentimes forgotten, is sustaining change. How do you sustain the changes that you're making? And this can be all kinds of changes. They can be changes in structure. They can be changes in design. They can be changes in operating practices, whatever the case might be. But again, being a living system, organizations need to be prepared for changes in order for that change to happen. I can share with you, I can count the number of times that I've worked with executive teams where it's taken them 6 months, for example, to decide what the change is going to be or what final decision they're going to make about a particular change. And now again, it's taken them 6 months to get to that point. So then they announce the change, right? They put it out as a big formal fanfare, and then they have an expectation that the 10,000 employees who work for them are going to turn around and achieve results in the next 2 weeks. Well, I refer to that as magic thinking. That's really not the way it works. When you're thinking about organizations as machines, yeah, you can flip switches, you can feed it a program, and it'll respond immediately. But organizations really don't operate that way.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes we forget about the rollout period especially if it's 10,000 employees, quite a bit of people.
Yeah, well, you've got to move people from understanding the change to agreeing with the change, to embracing the change, to committing to the change, and then acting on that change. And that's a steep stairway. in many cases. And so understanding what's needed and supporting that becomes important.
And this, I'm starting to see the side of the human part that you're talking about too, because we all have egos, and if we don't have if we're not ready for change, especially on the human side, then we're never going to see that change. There's going to be a lot of resistance and could assume.
Yeah.
So, okay, now that we kind of understand the reason why your work is so important, one of the things I'm very curious about is the marketing, and specifically through the lens of your business, because you've been in business for like 30 plus years, right? And so I'm sure you've seen technologies come in, come out. I'm really interested what does your marketing look like? How has your marketing evolved over time, and what does it look like today, I guess?
The constant in my marketing effort has been the significance of word of mouth. My ideal client is a large organization, generally work with larger rather than smaller companies. We're talking of, upwards of 5,000 employees, significant revenues. Working with larger companies on longer term engagements. So most of my assignments in terms of working with an executive and his or her leadership team is generally a minimum of 9 to 12 months. Frequently, they run much longer than that. I had a client that I worked with in a thinking partnership for a period of 7 years, helping that organization through some really challenging, difficult times. So those first two criteria is that they're a larger organization. Secondly, that the assignments are longer term assignments. And thirdly, we have a leader who's willing and acknowledges the importance of learning, not only for themselves, but for the rest of the organization. If they don't have a learning mindset, they're really not my type of client. So they really need to enter into a partnership that way. Now, back to your marketing question. Because my clients have been long-term, obviously I have very in-depth and intimate sort of professional relationship with these people, and leaders talk. So when leaders are looking for assistance and support at that level, they're not going to go onto a website looking for someone or shopping for someone to establish that kind of intimate long-term relationship. They rely on other leaders who have been through that experience to offer suggestions. And so for me, marketing has been primarily word of mouth and introducing leaders to leaders and being part of professional organizations where there's a chance to connect with a network of leaders. So networking has continued to serve me well. I've tried other avenues. I have a website. It's more like a business card than anything else. It gives some credibility and validity to my experience and to the kinds of services that I provide. That's been helpful. It's been valuable. I'm on all of the appropriate social media as a company. The polling group is on LinkedIn. The polling group is on Facebook. And so I'm represented in social media as well. Again, that's, creates some interest, some curiosity, and promoting that does the same. But again, I've gotten several clients through that approach. But again, most of my clients have come to me through people who know people.
Now, it's leaders referring leaders to other leaders. We can start from that. Do you remember your chain of thought?
Yeah. Did you pick up the part about the ideal leader, or did I talk about that after you had left?
You did talk about the ideal leader. You talked about the three things, and then you're getting back into my question about we don't, it's not like they click on a website or anything like that. It's really referral based. It's usually word of mouth from one leader to another leader. That's where I last heard you.
Well, that's probably where I ended then. That's probably where I ended the question. As long as I covered the points about larger companies, long-term clients, leaders who are interested in learning.
To learn.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. So we can pick up with a new question.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Hold on. Let me just get.
I assume you edit this.
We do for sure. We definitely do. Unless unless we want the awkward pauses in the podcast, but yeah, we typically edit that.
It's all good.
Yeah. So leaders. Okay. So Terry, people are kind of finding out about you. it sounds like most of your marketing is from word of mouth. So once people start working with you, what does a coaching engagement look like since you're dealing with larger organizations? Earlier, you mentioned one-on-one like engagements, but I would love to kind of hear what these coaching engagements look like.
Yeah. Well, they vary, but there's some common denominators. And that's what I'm trying to get my mind around here, because I think that's probably what's most useful to the listener. Again, I'm usually introduced to the leader by someone who knows someone, and we have an initial sort of intake conversation around what their vision is, what their values are, what they hope to get out of the assignment, how will things look differently when this assignment is completed, so that they can actually embody what it is that they're talking about, rather than reciting it from a piece of paper. And so that intake is important for me to understand how well they understand what they're about to embark on, and how well they understand themselves upon entering into that assignment. My first advice to all leaders, and I would also offer this to the listeners of this podcast, is that, Socrates was right. Know thyself. And self-awareness and self-reflection are key to any successful leader. That ability to witness oneself in the moment and understand what one is feeling and what's triggered one, and what thoughts are coming up, and why am I responding this way to this person or this particular message, and really having sort of a handle on that. And then also taking the time to self-reflect, to sit back and think about one's actions on occasions, so that one learns from that and one can make changes as they move forward. So again, that's back to that learning mindset that I referenced earlier. And so the agenda then becomes threefold, usually in these thinking partnerships, as I call them. And I frequently avoid the word coaching with senior executives. Some have a favorable response to that term, and they understand what coaching is best, and its best qualities. There are others that have sort of an anemia around the term. And so thinking partnership is one that's more palatable, I have found, for executive leaders. And so in this thinking partnership, we generally have three agendas. One has to do with the business or the project or the assignment that they're trying to accomplish. As I said before, in many cases, they're attempting to implement something of strategic significance. They're looking to bring about a change within the organization of some substance. So the coaching conversations, the thinking partnerships, talk a lot about progress on the assignment, how things are going. The second agenda that we cover in these conversations is their relational agenda with their leaders and their leadership team. So we're looking at the relational dynamics at play and what's working and what's not working in terms of their relationship with others for whom they're dependent to bring about change within the organization. So the relational agenda is the second agenda. And then the third agenda is their own personal leadership development agenda around what skills, capacities are they trying to build for themselves as a leader. And that can be related to, the current performance. So performance can become a conversation. It can relate to readiness. Building readiness for another kind of position or a bigger role in the organization or some other organization. So readiness can become a topic of conversation. And then obviously one that's of concern to all leaders is their potential. Long term, what is my potential, and am I really focusing on that, and am I really cultivating that as well? So this developmental agenda is the third. So again, the business or task agenda, the second is their relational agendas, and the third has to do with their own development agenda.
By the way, thank you for using the word. It's so much more, it's more accurate than the term coaching, to be honest with you. But something that's on my mind is like one of the major important things was like leaders' willingness to learn. And after you describing the dynamic of a thinking partnership, I can see why that's so important. But did you kind of discover that on day one, or did that kind of evolve where you kind of realized that later?
Yeah, no, again, like a lot of things in one's career, it's something that evolves over time. I had started business as I say, well, I was supporting organizations since, well, before God, actually. It's been a long time. But in 1995, I think it was 95, I got snowed in at a hotel. I was on a client visit and I got snowed in. And I spent 3 days in a hotel. And to make best use of that time, what I did was I sat back and took some time to really reflect on what my top needs and values are as a professional. And I came up with a list of 12 values that were important to me, and they sit on my credenza in my office, and they sort of become anchors for me in terms of what I do professionally. The second thing was to develop a mission statement. Again, this is a piece of advice I would offer to others, and it was part of my learning to establish a mission for what it was that I was doing. And I've had this mission statement for close to 30 years. And it's served me well again. And if I can read it to you, it's helping leaders achieve greater wisdom, integrity, effectiveness, and fulfillment for themselves, their organizations, and the world at large. And there's a lot in there. I realize that wisdom, integrity, effectiveness, and fulfillment are the four key terms included in that mission statement. And again, it's been an anchor for me, and that's not something I started with. That's something that I learned over time. The other thing was I had recognized, again, self-reflection and self-awareness being important, that there were 4 developmental edges that I had in the early 2000s. One, I needed to develop more courage, and I can give you reasons for that, but that's one. The second one, I needed greater patience. The third one was compassion, and the fourth one was gratitude. So these 4 things were in my awareness as 4 things that I really needed to be mindful of, if you will, in terms of my own development. And you know what they say, be careful what you ask for. You've heard that saying. In 2008, the universe hands me this opportunity to live and work in Africa for 8 months. And so out of the blue, this opportunity presents itself. And I thought, well, what better opportunity to focus on courage, patience, compassion, and gratitude than working in Ethiopia for 8 months, providing leadership development for college new hires for the telecommunication business. And so I packed my bags. This all happened within like a 3-week period. I packed my bags and I moved to Africa for 8 months, supporting, again, the same mission, but just in a different environment. And again, that was all part of my learning journey. And I would say out of the 4 things, the ones that I've developed the most, well, let me say the one that I've developed the least is patience. I still have a hard time with patience.
Tell me about the courage part, because that's not a typical thing that I normally hear, I guess.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is going to sound really funny, but early in my career, especially when I worked internal, that first 18 years that I worked internally, I found myself being intimidated by status and rank. So I found myself frequently in senior leader offices because of the projects that I was working on. But I could feel myself feeling a level of anxiety and a level of concern and self-awareness and all of these other things that come up in the presence of people who had status and rank in an organization. You might say I was intimidated by that. And the breakthrough for me was one of the companies that I worked for. I had a bad boss, and I was a director of organizational development for a healthcare firm in Boston. Let me give you a quick story here. This person was pretty erratic in their behavior and could be very kind in one moment, but extremely violent in another. And I was, along with a peer of mine, was called to our boss's office. And he reached across the table and grabbed my colleague by the tie and pulled him across the desk and was shouting into his face about something. I don't even remember what the issue was at the time. And then pushed him back and then started to come to me. And I took one step back and I said, "You will not touch me. And I realized in that moment that there was a line that I didn't know existed that I was not willing to cross. And that was one of those moments where courage surfaced for me as being a critical element. And I have to share with you, ever since that experience, I have not been intimidated. I have not been self-conscious in the presence of senior leaders. So it was a breakthrough, if you will, for me. So courage was one of those areas that I said I need to continue to refine, and I need to continue to understand and work on for myself as a coach, as a trainer, as a business owner.
One thing that strikes me is there's a level of depth. I can imagine these thinking partnerships, like, because you're explaining your own journey, right? And like your breakthroughs, your aha moments. And I can only imagine like the clients that you work with in these thinking partnerships, the level breakthroughs that they're having as well. And something that strikes me is that it sounds like what you're doing seems pretty intimate. And so how do you manage your client capacity, like the number of clients that you have and all that? Do you have like other coaches helping you, like, or other support? Like, I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. The scope of the business, as I had referenced earlier, grew with time, and Metadynamics, which was the company in Michigan, we actually provided all of the leadership development training for a German-based company in Canada, US, and Mexico. And we delivered over 200 programs a year. And so at that time, I had 24 associates working for me with different skill sets. We had instructional designers, facilitators, trainers, coaches, a whole variety of skill sets for that assignment. And that continues to be true today, although, Metadynamics no longer exists. In terms of the polling group, I partner with a lot of folks. I'm part of several networks, and they support me and I support them in terms of the work that we do. And so, yes, it's larger than just myself. Relying on people who you've come to know and trust over the years is, an important part of any business development plan. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It really does. Like, it's just like, how the heck do you like manage all these like engagements and all that? And it's just like really interesting.
Well, that's one of the reasons you're hitting upon. One of the major reasons that I closed Metadynamics 2 or 3 years ago was I found myself managing that business because it was so intense in terms of the level of training courses that we were providing that I wasn't really in the field practicing much myself. And so I needed to make more space for having direct impact on business leaders. That was one of the reasons that I closed that business. Your point's well taken. It was pretty demanding business to operate that way. It was great for the money. It was great for, recognition. It was great for the ego to be able to do all of that. But there was something missing for me. That was a 15-year assignment with this client that I referenced. And when we came up for renewal, I simply said, it's been a great run, but I'm just not interested in continuing this for now. So since then, I've been doing my own thing with others in terms of the polling group.
It's beautiful because, when you shared your kind of like, I don't know how you put it, your mission statement with those 4 things like wisdom, integrity, fulfillment, effectiveness, you kind of went back to directly helping those leaders versus like, you're still helping, but you're more managing the business and not having that direct.
Yeah.
Something I do want to ask you too, because things like leadership, sometimes leadership, it's harder to like price a lot of times. Like with sales and marketing, there's direct KPIs. You can actually like tie it to ROI. But with the value of leadership, sometimes it can be subjective. And so since you've been in this business for a while, I would love to talk about pricing strategy for you, how you price these engagements. Obviously, you don't have to give any hard numbers, but I've heard of different pricing strategies where some people do value-based pricing, where they'll price the client based off of the value that the client receives from that engagement. But then I've heard people kind of do retainers, and there's so many different pricing models. Yeah. Which ones have you kind of like gravitated to?
I've used them all.
Really?
I really have. I've done value-based, I've done objective-based, project-based, I've done retainer-based. I've done the hourly thing, along the way and experimenting with that. So yeah, there's been a variety of different models that I've used. Is there one one way that works best. I think that really depends on the nature of your business and the type of client that you're trying to retain. Again, my target audience are executives. We're talking senior levels here. So pricing, if it's priced too low, it's seen as not having value. And that's not an excuse to charge, as much as you can. But again, you got to recognize that the contribution that you're making to these people's lives is significant. And if they're really in a learning mindset and taking the assignment seriously, they're going to value that time and they're going to pay for it. And so I think that's the place to start, is to understand what it is that they're needing and what is it that you're providing for the client. And in a sense, what's that really worth in the bigger picture? So yeah, I've done it all.
Who decides how much, what it's worth? Do you kind of dictate that, or is that done through the discovery with the client?
Yeah, it's both. And let me explain. I have a minimum, right? Because I know what my time is worth, and I want to be selective about my time. So I don't want to just spread myself thin on assignments that, aren't paying well and aren't really having the kind of impact that they should have. And so having said that, knowing what my minimum is, then working with the client to understand what the value is for them and what they're trying to accomplish, it becomes a conversation, and a price point becomes one of collaboration, co-creating that price point.
Yeah, level of engagement, like having a minimum, what you just explained. Yes.
Right. Exactly. And the other thing besides fees, again, is the length of the assignment, recognize, and the frequency by which we meet. Generally, I don't accept coaching assignments that are less than, like I said, 9 to 12 months in length. Again, because we have 3 agendas, which are generally on the table. And if you're going to deal with all 3 of those agendas, you're talking about some time here. Also, frequency, getting a commitment that one will meet every other week is a key element to this. So that helps me too from a scheduling point of view, because then I know how to manage my time and manage my schedule with all clients because of that structure. So that's another key part in addition to pricing.
That's good to remember too. Yeah. And I'm sure, yes, definitely for those 3 transformations, or those 3, I forgot what you called them, but definitely warrants the 9 to 12 months. But that's also really good for your business because there's some stability of revenue to the business as well.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Just to reiterate, most of the time I'm working with these leaders, not only around their one-on-one work in this thinking partnership, but generally there's a parallel assignment that's also at play where we're working on a strategy, or we're doing strategic thinking, or we're implementing a transformational kind of project. So that's separate from the thinking partnership. That becomes consulting time, and that gets priced differently. So my income is supplemented by both the one-on-one work as well as the consulting work that I do with teams and leadership groups.
I see. That's awesome. Okay. So it almost feels like a multidisciplinary practice. You have the consulting arm, then you have the thinking partnership arm, and maybe some other modalities as well. But that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something I did want to ask you, because you mentioned something really, really interesting, how you shut down your previous business, Metadynamics. I guess for the polling group, where do you want the business to take you in the next few years? I can't imagine you having any desire to scale massively, but do you have any secret dreams no one knows about? I'm very curious about this next season.
Yeah, no, I'm moving towards, what's the word? Partial retirement. I guess is one way of phrasing that, because of my age. And, I've put in a lot of time in my career, and now to a place where some people refer to it as third wave. So I have some things that I want to do and accomplish in the next phase of my career. And writing a book is one of those. That's a big piece. And that's going to take some time, to pull off. I've started that process, in my mind, and I've gathered a lot of notes on that, but to actually sit back and put pen to paper in terms of writing the book, I haven't done that yet. So I need to make time for that. So I have been working with another gentleman. I've been a mentor for another business owner for a period of time. He's done work with me. He's partnered with me for close to 10 years now. And so what's happening is I'm beginning to shift my client work in his direction, so that as new clients come in or new assignments come in, they can fall under his business model and under his leadership, and then I would be a support person for that assignment, which is going to be necessary for a while because clients, don't. Clients want me to be involved to some extent, and so that's going to be necessary for a while. But that's the plan: is to actually migrate my business to him, and there's some shared ownership around that, and there's some investment and whatnot involved in that. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you ever have desires to sell your business? But it already sounds like you have a legacy plan.
Yeah, it's more of a legacy plan and a transitional plan. So, yeah.
As you're approaching this next season of your business and life, what are some challenges that you're noticing, in this?
Challenges shift as one goes through life. The first part of life, what was important to me was a sense of purpose and a sense of identity, and those were important to me. I also said that a sense of meaning and a sense of belonging was important, but less so. The first half of my career, it was around identity and purpose, which I think is appropriate. And this is a message for your listeners, is that, if you're in the first half of your career, having an identity, establishing an identity, and that's all around marketing, for example, it's all around self-awareness, it's all around those things, having an identity and also a sense of purpose, knowing what you're about and what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to put out in the world, and again, that's where the mission statement, that's where the values and everything that I referred earlier were so critical. In the second half of my career, it's more around finding meaning and belonging, a sense of belonging in the world. And so as I'm approaching the third wave, it's less about acquisition and acquiring. It's more about letting go and shedding certain aspects of my identity that I've taken a long time to build, right? And I've held very tightly to those core pieces of who I am. And so now that's changing, and being able to shed some of that and let go of some of that is a challenge. It's a challenge. I think it's a challenge for any business person or any professional that gets to a certain point in their life where they've really valued what they've done, and now they're looking to do something different. So letting go is a major challenge.
If you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to ask you, what's one thing that you need to let go, but is really, really difficult for you?
Yeah. Saying no to some referrals is tough, especially when they're, exciting, sound like exciting opportunities and whatnot. So the way in which I'm letting go of that is not to say no to that referral, but to assist in bringing that referral to fruition for others. And so I'm still engaged, but in a sense have partially let go because it would no longer be my business. It'll be somebody else's business. And so that's hard. That's hard to do. Also, letting go of a busy schedule. The momentum is a wonderful thing. Inertia is a wonderful thing because it carries us far and provides energy when we may not have the energy. But at the same time, when you need to put the brakes on a little bit, that inertia can be a challenge. So yeah, slowing down and taking more time for myself and my family is something I definitely want to do and something I value, but it's a challenge.
Do you feel like you'll ever retire, completely? Because the reason why I asked this, by the way, because I get a sense that you love your work, and it's almost like, yes, I know you're slowing down, but do you think you're ever going to stop?
I get that question from my wife all the time. Are you ever going to fully retire? I think your observation and your sense is correct here. If there's the right assignment, if there's the right project, I'm going to continue to play in the field, right? I'm going to continue to be involved to some extent, as long as, I'm adding value and as long as I'm still able to have impact in ways that I think are serving individuals and the world. You're right. It's hard to walk completely away from that. Probably not. Probably won't fully retire.
That's so interesting. Terry, I'd love to play. We're coming near the end of the podcast, but I'd love to play a few games with you if you're open to it. The first one is a storytelling game, and I want to do it through the lens of business investments because, as you know, a lot of coaches, a lot of entrepreneurs, they invest to things like coaching, training, marketing, team members, a lot of different things, right? And so what I'm going to do, just like a therapist, I want to kind of prompt a phrase and you just tell me the first thing that comes to mind and if there's a story associated with it. Okay?
All right. Fair enough.
Okay, cool. First business investment you remember.
Administrative assistant.
How long ago was that?
35 years ago.
Is that administrative assistant still with you today?
We're still friends, but that person served me for 33 years, and she is retired and doing her own thing. But that was the first. The second was acquiring an office space. Yeah. So those were two investments that happened very early after I left. I said it was internal for 18 years. When I made the decision to start a business, it was like jumping off a cliff and hoping that something would happen before I hit bottom. And I did fortunately have a client assignment at that time, but it was significant enough that I was daring and rented office space and hired an assistant. So that's more than one word, but those were two early investments that I made.
Last business investment you made?
The last investment? To attend a integral workshop earlier this year in Colorado. I have throughout my career identified for myself a significant conference or a seminar or a developmental workshop to attend. And I've done that every year consistently for 30 plus years. And so I did that as recent as last spring. It's something that I would advise all professionals to do.
Best business investment you made?
Best business investment I've made. Well, I think it's related to the latter. It's an investment in oneself to develop and continue to expand one's knowledge base, to expand one's skill set, to expand one's thinking, to continue to feed that, learning mindset that I've spoken about a couple of times, I think is the best investment I've ever made.
Is there a specific investment that comes to mind? Or is it just a general theme of continuous?
Well, I'm a prolific reader. I mean, I read a lot and I buy lots of books. And so I do read a lot. And that's related to this, personal development that I've been talking about, as well as workshops and seminars and those kinds of things. So from my point of view, even a book I didn't like, that I usually found something of value in it, that, has expanded me in some ways. That's been a costly piece, but it's been beneficial.
Last prompt. Worst business investment that you kind of wish you got your
worst investment. I invested 3 years in a company that I should have left earlier. This is when I worked internal. And that's something I would offer your listeners is do not work for a bad boss longer than you need to. And you shouldn't have to. Don't waste your time thinking that this person will change or that the circumstances will change in your favor. You really need to cut bait and get out. So that was an investment of 3 years. In retrospect, that there were things I gained from that. I gained, as I said, this was the same boss that I was referring to earlier. I gained, a sense of courage in that assignment, but it was all in all, it's not 3 years that I'd like to repeat or 3 years that I would do over again. Well, the consistency has been, investing in oneself and one's development. That's important. From a financial point of view, save early and build some, investments financially for yourself and put a portion of the money back in the business, but you have to put a portion of the money into your future as well. I have the luxury of, not needing to work after all these years. I think I was wise around my financial investments and I feel secure in that regard. And it takes a lot of pressure off. And I think this is where a lot of consultants and a lot of coaches get into trouble. They panic and they will accept assignments that prove not to be beneficial. So actually what I was saying earlier, don't spend time with a bad boss or a bad company is related to this. Don't put time in there or money into things that don't benefit you long term. But you do have to invest in the business and you do have to invest in your future financially. Otherwise you panic.
Last question for you. Final advice from you. I'm sure over the years you've gotten a lot of advice, some of it good, some of it probably not so good, some of it solicited, some of it unsolicited. So this next section is called overrated, underrated. So what's the most overrated piece of business advice that you've gotten? What's the most underrated piece of advice that you've gotten?
Yeah. Especially over the last 20 years, I have heard, I don't know how many times from so many people that I needed to get certified as a coach. I needed to go through the whole process of getting certified. And as I was sharing in the story earlier, my background in coaching was from a counseling psychology background. I've got all of my education. Now, I did do a certificate program through the University of Michigan, which was a counseling and coaching program. And I also got certified through the Institute of Independent Business, which was another way of developing business coaching capacities. But I have not been certified as a leadership coach or as an ICF coach. And I've been told that, I wouldn't get clients unless I had that pedigree, unless I had that. And so that's been way overrated in my experience. The executives that I dealt with, they really don't care. They really are not looking for that pedigree. And so that's been overrated advice for me. I've done well without it. And I think others can as well. So, and then you're saying underrated. Yes. Underrated advice. Well, yeah, being humble and being open to mentors that you may not expect and learning from your clients. That's probably been underrated in terms of its importance in my life. And so you never know where the best piece of advice or the best thought will come from. And being open to that and receptive to that is something that I've heard repeatedly, but I think it's been underrated.
Terry, last question for you. How can people find you and connect?
My website is thepollinggroup.com. Again, it's thepollinggroup.com. And you can go directly to my website and you can access or contact me through that. I'm on LinkedIn. My contact information is on LinkedIn. You can look for me by name or you can look for me through the Polling Group on LinkedIn. So those would probably be the best two ways to find me.
Terry, there's just
my phone number is available and both of those.
There's just so much in here, right? I think the most important thing is it really shows that more than just the systems and the tactical stuff, I can really see how you really impact people's lives. And I think that thing that you said earlier about helping leaders achieve wisdom, integrity, fulfillment, effectiveness, it really comes to play. Honestly, like you said, you could have retired way sooner. You could probably retire now. You don't really need to work, but I can tell that you really do love this work. So I just want to say, Terry, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for just coming onto a podcast and openly sharing your wisdom too. So many people are going to benefit from it because we covered a lot of the business stuff, but more so what I'm taking away is your why of why you do Thinking Partnership. So thank you so much, Terry.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. And I hope that what I've offered here has been a benefit to the listeners because that's why I wanted to do this. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story with others.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you, Terry.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.